to get into talking more about consumer theory. That's what we call it in economics. So consumer theory, we're focusing on consumers and buyers and how they make decisions, why they buy certain things and certain amounts of these things. And what did we say was the goal of consumers in economics?
To get the maximum amount of utility they can kind of get from a product.
Yeah, maximize utility. Good. And what is utility?
Like happiness, or like, I guess, what you like, your overall like emotion of how you are with your product.
That's right. It's like happiness or even satisfaction you're getting when you're buying items. And, we typically think when we go shopping, go to the grocery store, we buy things we like. We might buy things, for other people that we might not really like. You might buy something for your parents that they need. But think about the things you're buying for yourself. You're buying things that you like. And even if you like buy a salad because you want to be a little bit more healthier and you're not super excited about the salad, you might get some satisfaction out of actually just eating healthier. So, you're choosing this because you want these things. But we're going to talk about, how consumers make decisions based on that utility and also prices, because a big problem or big thing that prevents us from buying too much or buying as much as we want are prices. We can't really control prices. We buy and pay what the sign says at the store. We don't really like haggle or anything. And we also are limited by our budget, our income. You can't just purchase everything we want, houses and cars and boats, if we don't have that income. So we said utility is a satisfaction or happiness you get from consuming items, goods or services. So you can also talk about services like haircuts or dry cleaning. That would also work here. But we want to remember a few things about utility. First of all, it's subjective. We are not going to have the same idea of utility for different things as each other. We're all going to have a different idea for it. And we actually don't quantify it. Like, you don't go to the store and think about, okay, my utility level is 14. That doesn't make any sense. What we're doing with utility as economists, we're able to kind of look at purchases that people make and come up with this utility. We typically come up with a utility function, which we don't really do here because the math is a little bit more tricky. But we can come up with a utility function which kind of tells us a level of this happiness they're getting. And it's not the same thing as usefulness. So like, you buy a new phone or a new computer, you may not need it, or you may just need like the basic model. But if you get like the better model, it's not because it's more useful necessarily, it's maybe you just want it, and that's okay. So it's not usefulness, it's just really how happy you are. Okay, so we have some definitions. Like I said, there's going to be some math here that we're going to go through. So first of all, when we talk about units of utility, we're going to use what's called a util, so UTIL. That's a weird word, kind of fun to say though. So if we say like utility for this good is 5, we would say 5 utils, or you can say units of utility. Now, total utility, we're going to be using, sometimes I abbreviate it TU. So total utility is the total amount of satisfaction from all the goods you have. So like if you have 3, say, coffees, that's the total utility you have of all of them. You have 6, it's the total utility of all of those coffees. A lot of coffee, but total utility doesn't, it's for any amount. Now, marginal utility, and remember, we think in economics on the margin a lot. Marginal utility is the extra or additional satisfaction we get from an additional unit of the good. So when we get one more, how much happier are we? And yeah, clear this. Okay, so just mathematically. And we're going to go through some examples. It doesn't look like a cube, does it? Oh my gosh, not working out. MU. So we use this delta, remember, for change. It's the change in total utility over the change in quantity. Now, luckily, in our class, we kind of do something that makes this a little easier. This change in quantity that we're going to be using is always going to be 1. So we're always going to be talking about 1 more unit instead of like different amounts. So here, I'm just going to note the change in quantity is going to be 1. And so what we really have is just the change in total utility. And so that's what we'd use for marginal utility. We can kind of break this down and say, maybe this is total utility, say, of 1 unit minus the total utility of 0 units. So what this says is we look at the total utility maybe when we have nothing and compare it to what we get when we have 1 unit. But then we can look, you know, at the next unit. So we can also just bring this up by 1 and look at the difference between having 1 unit and 2 units. So you're just going to keep adding 1 to these. You're looking at like the one above. I'll show you what this looks like in a table, but you know, 1 more than the next and seeing that change. Okay, so before we get into an actual example, I just want to mention something called the law of diminishing marginal utility. This is something that helps explain why demand is downward sloping. And this definition says, as consumption of a good or service increases, so this Q keeps increasing, the marginal utility, like we were just talking about, obtained from each additional good decreases. So as you get more items, more of the same good, your marginal utility decreases. Now, if you drink coffee, think about having coffee in the morning. Think about the happiness or satisfaction you get from the first cup of coffee. You know, you're getting up for this 8 a.m. class, it's economics, you may not be too excited about it, but you get a cup of coffee and you're like, oh, thank God, I needed this. But then, you know, maybe you get a second one and you're like, okay, this is all right. I'm not like super excited about it because I was really excited about the first one, but having a second one's okay. Then if you get a third one and a fourth one, that happiness, that additional happiness might start going down. You know, you might be like, okay, my stomach hurts or I'm getting jittery. I don't need this third and fourth cup. So I start having less additional utility as I'm getting more of these coffees. And that's the same thing for a lot of things. You know, we get too much of a good. We would prefer maybe to get something else instead of having, you know, this good, this particular good, and many of them. So it helps explain this, you know, the downward sloping demand, because in order really for us to want maybe to get more of a certain good, more coffee, paying less, you know, paying a lower price might help us buy more. If it stays the same price, you know, like $5 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks, say, we may not want to buy 4. But if it starts going down in price, we might start buying more. I have a quick comic I thought was kind of funny. I found online a while ago. Kind of corny, but this monster has calculated their utility, compared it to, you know, maybe the utility or this utility, the you know, bad utility this Peter guy is getting from the flood, and says that his utility is, you know, going to be more. So we don't calculate it. We don't calculate our utility, but we kind of also think about it in our head, right? You can kind of rank things when you're buying items at a store. You know, you're kind of like, I like bananas more than I like apples, so I'm going to buy more bananas. And you know, you're like, I like ham more than turkey, so you buy more ham. If that's the case. So that's kind of, you know, you're thinking about technically benefits, but also how much satisfaction and happiness you're getting compared to different items. Okay. So let's look at an actual example. All right, so let's talk about tacos. And we're going to talk about it in one meal. Now, if you don't like tacos, remember we're thinking about just a average consumer individual that we're looking at. So if you don't like tacos, you can think about like slices of pizza or something else that you like to eat. So Q is always quantity. This is going to be quantity here of tacos that we're eating. We have total utility, marginal utility. Now, what you're going to be given is going to be in pink. So like if you had a question on a quiz or homework later on, you'll be given what I'm writing down in pink and need to solve the other stuff. So the quantity is going to go from 0 to 7. So these are different amounts of tacos we're eating during one meal. And for 0 units, think about how much happiness you're getting when you have no tacos. It's probably 0. So we typically assume that at 0 units, we're getting 0 utility. Total utility is 0. And as we get more, our total utility is going to increase. So 1 taco gives us 10. 2 of them together give us 18, and so forth. I'm going to write these all down. And just make sure we got this. Higher utility is better. So like if I say, you know, the utility of 1 taco is 10, but the, you know, for 2 tacos is 18, 18 is better. Just make sure we understand this. So this would be maybe what's given for you. In your table, you'll have like a line here. Because for marginal utility, we can't like calculate at 0. So we just have a line or a dash here. Let me get a different color. I'll use blue. And now we want to find this marginal utility, which again is the change in total utility. Quantity is going up by 1, so we don't need to divide by anything. Just use the change in total utility. And if you remember, the first like little equation I gave you said we can use TU1 minus TU0. The change between having 1 taco and 0 tacos. Well, we have for 1 taco, it's 10. And for 0, it's 0. So we just do 10 minus 0. Let me put that note. So you take this one and you subtract the one above it. We're going to do the same thing for the next one. So we're going to take 18 and subtract the one above that. So having 1 taco compared to 2 tacos. 18 minus 10 is 8. And you continue doing that. So 24 minus 18. 6. And 28 minus 24. 30 minus 28. Here we have 30 minus 30, which is 0, and that's okay to get. And the last one's 28 minus 30, or negative 2. It's okay to get 0 here for marginal utility or get a negative. So there's, if you do that, that's okay. It's not, you know, you're not doing this incorrectly. But this is typically at least the end going to be decreasing. So if you get a negative like in the middle and then get a positive, you probably did something wrong. The negative or 0 would be toward the bottom because this is like decreasing. Okay, so we have some information here. This marginal utility, again, it's the additional utility we're getting from extra tacos. And this is tacos for a meal. Now, some of us might be able to eat a lot of tacos, some of us not too many. I love tacos, but eating 7 might be too much. So for this person, they're getting more tacos and they're getting happier, their utility is going up. But between 5 and 6, they're not getting any more happiness. They're like, I can eat this 6th taco, but it's like whatever. I'll just eat it. I don't want to waste it. But then if they eat the 7th, their utility actually starts decreasing. Their stomach might hurt. They might not feel well. They might just be really full. So they actually lose some utility. And that's what this negative marginal utility says or is. When you lose some utility, it's negative. And that's okay to have. Okay, I'm going to show you what this looks like graphed on the slides. This is the same example we just did. So they're first going to graph total utility from these numbers. And this line, you see, it's increasing, then it kind of straightens out, and it goes down at the end, representing the, this change 30 to 28. So total utility is typically like this. It's increasing up to a point, and then it might go down, depending on how much information we have. You might only be given a table like this up to 5 units. So you might not see it actually go down. It just depends what you're given. And then we have marginal utility, and graphed at the bottom. And for this example, this is always just a downward sloping line, and it ends up going negative. Sometimes marginal utility might go up at first and then go down, but it's mostly going to be decreasing, something like this. So when total utility is going down, we have a negative marginal utility here. But if it's increasing, marginal utility is a positive number, though it's falling. Okay, you're not going to have to graph these. I just wanted to show you what it looks like, how the numbers work out. And when we think about consumers and we talk about their behavior, I want to make some assumptions. So first of all, that they behave rationally. And you might think, oh God, people aren't rational, and I totally agree with you. But when we talk about rationality here, consumer theory, and talking about utility, we basically say that their preferences are fairly consistent. So like if you say you like apples more than bananas today, it'll be about the same for every day afterward. You like apples more than bananas for the most part. You're not going to change every other day. Bananas are better, apples are better, bananas are better. You're going to be consistent. So that's that rational behavior. They can otherwise be irrational, but they know what they like, and they also want to maximize their utility. We also have to just talk about that limitation they have, this constraint, this budget constraint. So you want to remember that people have, so much money, first of all, a budget, and they might put toward, some items, like you might have a budget for groceries, but you only have so much money, right? Or so much income too. We're going to assume that we can't use a credit card here. You're using so much, just a budget. And we're actually going to keep this, use this budget exactly. So you're not going to take money from a different category or something. You're just using so much money. And we also have prices. And again, I said at the beginning of class, we can't really control prices in the market or at stores. When we go to the store, we pay what's the price on the shelf. And We can't really like haggle or anything. So I just want to write down what the budget constraint looks like. We typically don't have to write this out too much, but it might be helpful. So I'm going to say the budget's maybe called B. So how much money we're putting towards these goods. And when we're talking about really thinking about how much people are buying, that's going to be our goal, how much people should buy. We're really just going to look at 2 goods here. Assume they're only buying 2 different goods. And what that does is just make it easier for us. We can, do the analysis really quickly or relatively quickly and easily. Whereas if we had 3 or 4 or 100 goods, it would take more time and more effort. So just sticking with 2 goods and assuming that's all they're buying. So say they're buying X and Y. This is and, not plus. These are 2 goods that they're buying. So the budget constraint is going to look like the price of the X good, whatever this price is, times the amount of X, plus the price of the other good Y times the amount. So how much we're spending on X and how much we're spending on Y should equal our budget. Okay, so this might be helpful as we go forward, possibly. And the goal of this chapter, so we're talking about utility maximization, and we're going to be looking at some big examples where we're going to have information on individuals and their utility. We want to find how much of 2 goods, like X and Y, or 2 goods that were given, they should buy to maximize that utility. We call that sometimes a combination or bundle of goods for this consumer. So we want to find this bundle, again, amounts of X and Y, they should purchase that will maximize their utility. That is our goal overall. So we have this utility maximizing rule, and it might look weird, but we're going to talk it over. And really, so just in words, the consumer is allocating their income or their budget. So the last dollar spent on each product yields the same amount of extra marginal utility. Now that sounds kind of weird. Overall, what we want is the marginal utility of the first good A, should have used that before, but whatever the first good is, over the price of that good A should equal the marginal utility of the other B over the price of B. This is going to maximize our total utility, this rule. So I'm going to go through an example just real quickly, not real quickly, but just go through it. All right, so we have 2 goods. We have apples and oranges. And the price of apples are $1. Say, pretend each are $1. And oranges both, cost $2. So we're going to look at quantity of apples. And in this example, you're actually given marginal utility. So we're not finding it here, but we could find it like we did before. And this next column that we're going to have to find is marginal utility per dollar. That was over here, this marginal utility over the price. I'm going to write that down too. So marginal utility over the price of apples. Now for oranges, we're going to have a similar thing. And again, we're given marginal utility. Okay, so you might be given two tables like this, or it might be in one big table. You're given the prices of the two goods. Apples are $1, oranges are $2. And you'll also be given what your budget is. And in this case, it's going to be $10. And again, our goal is to find the utility maximizing bundle, amounts of apples and oranges this consumer should buy. All right, so again, we have marginal utility. This might be something we have to find later on in another example, but we're given it, so that's good. It takes a little less time. Now we have to find, sorry, I'm all over the place. We have to find these marginal utility per dollar, as we call it, which again is the marginal utility of apples here over the price of apples. So we're going to take all of these marginal utilities and divide it by the price, which is just 1 actually. So this one's easy. We're going to do 10 divided by 1, 8 divided by 1. So it's all going to be the same. Hopefully you can see that. This one's a little more easy. Now oranges, we have to actually calculate a little bit just because they're now $2. So we're going to take all of these marginal utilities for oranges and divide it by $2. So 24 divided by 2, 20 divided by 2, and keep going. 18 divided by 2, and so forth. So after we find these, we found them relatively quickly. We want to find where the marginal utility per dollars are equal. So they can be equal in any amount. It doesn't have to be like in the same row, like 1 and 1. We just want to see where they're equal, period. So we go down. Is there a 10 over here? Yeah, so I'm going to circle it. Is there an 8? Well, yeah, there's an 8. We look at 7. There's no 7 here. But there is a 6. And there's a 3 and a 3. This says there's 4 possibilities of our answer here, of our combination. So in order to figure out which one is best, we want to find which combination equals our budget exactly. Because we have $10 and we're going to spend it all. Okay. When the marginal utility is 10, I'm starting just with the first one here. So the first one I circled. When the marginal utility is 10, can anybody tell me how many apples and oranges this person's buying, or, you know, are in the table? Anybody read that table?
$20.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
Make sure you ask what when they buy like $10 worth of oranges, how many they're getting, right?
So yeah, so with this marginal utility of 10 though, we want to look at the quantity.
Yes. So 2.
2 oranges, right? And then over here, 1 apple. Good. Okay, so in this combination, if we choose this, again, we just look at the quantity that it's in the same row as. So 10 looks at quantity of 2, and here 1. So it says 1 apple and 2 oranges. But we want to see if when we buy this, we actually spend our whole budget. And so what we do is we multiply it by the price of each. So 1 apple times $1, that costs us $1, right? And 2 oranges, we multiply it by 2, that costs $4. Altogether, we're going to add this up, and this equals 5. So that does not equal our budget. I don't need to circle that. It doesn't equal our budget of 10 that we're given up here. So we cross this one out, and it's not going to be our answer. We need to spend $10, whereas here we're just spending 5. So we can go on to the next one. Again, I'm just going in order. You can definitely skip around, but I just like to go in order. So when the marginal utility is 8, how many apples are we buying?
2.
2, good. And how many oranges?
4.
Yeah, good. So again, we just look out in the same row how much the quantity is for both of them. And we're going to multiply by the price of both. So 2 times 1 and 4 times 2. You just want to keep these, you know, together. You want to make sure you're using the right prices. And that gives us 8. So we'd be spending $2 on apples and $8 on oranges. We add that up and it does equal 10. This is our combination. Once we get to 10, we're done. We don't have to worry about the next 2. Okay, so done. We would say our utility maximizing combination are when we buy 2 apples and 4 oranges. We're spending our whole budget, and this person's going to be the happiest they can be with this combination. Okay, great. So here we have to maybe fill out a table, depending on what we need. Might need marginal utility, or we might need just the marginal utility per dollars. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Then we want to find where those marginal utility per dollars are equal. So these 2 columns, we want to see where they're equal. Again, it doesn't matter if they're different quantities, just wherever they're equal. Then we want to look at the combinations we just found and see which one cost our budget of $10. We started with the first one. We found how many apples and oranges they're buying, but that only costs $5. If they spend more money, they spend, you know, up to $10, they're probably going to be happier because they're going to get more products. You know, having more of these things are going to make them happy. So we have to go to the next one, and we did the same thing, and we did find it equaled the budget of 10. Once you do that, you're done. If you do the next 2, you know, if you just wanted to do them, you're going to find that it's going to be too expensive. So again, once you find it, you're done. And you're answer on like a homework would be the combinations, 2 apples and 4 oranges. Now you might think, oh, maybe this person should spend less, should go here and save some money. But we're assuming that here, they're only getting utility by buying apples and oranges. They don't get utility from saving money. So if they were to spend less, they're not going to be as happy as they could be. So they're going to use a whole budget. They allocated this just for apples and oranges. And so they can spend it all on that. All right. So this, just to let you know, this example is in your notes. So I went through, highlighted the ones that were equal in different colors. And we ended up finding that it's when it's 8 here. So this would be our answer, right? Just what we did. So here's 10. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a link. And I'm going to put you in groups again. So let me get chat. Okay. So that link's in the chat. Again, I'm going to put you in groups. When you get into your group, you can make a copy of this. Put what, you can just put your group number, I think is okay. And you're going to work on this together, hopefully answering like each other's questions. So this particular example, the person is buying movies and soda, maybe, going to the movies. They have the total utility given. They don't have the marginal utility though. So that's something you have to find for both of these. And then find the marginal utility per dollar for both of them. You're given that movies cost $8 and the soda's $4, and they have a budget of $40. And again, your goal is going to be to find that utility maximizing combination of movies and soda. Okay, let me go in groups. If you have questions, you can ask me to join. And I'll be like watching what you're doing. And hopefully you guys can work together to figure out how to solve these. Okay, Michelle, I'll be back. Sometimes these breakout rooms are a little weird because you have to wait a minute for everyone to come back into the main room, but it's fine. All right, so how was that activity? Not too bad? Okay, so I'm gonna look over it real quick with you guys, but just to let you know, for the quiz that's coming up on Wednesday or Thursday, sorry, you're not going to have to do this big problem. It takes some time, there's a little bit of work with it. You might see something like this on homework though. So you might have to maybe not fill in this whole chart, but it might say, okay, here's the total utilities of 2 goods. Find the bundle that maximizes utility. So you kind of have to fill in your own chart, maybe on notebook paper, and solve it out just like you did here. But again, not for a quiz. For like homework or maybe later on for an exam, but something shorter, definitely. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, we have, I'm just looking at the second slide, group 3, because it looks great. You're given the total utility and for movies and for soda. And first you need to find the marginal utility, which again is the change in total utility. So how much more utility are you getting from an extra movie or one more movie? Going from 0 movies to 1, how much utility do you get? And it's going to be 50 minus 0. Then going from 1 movie to 2, you have 90 at 2, but you subtract the one above at 50. You keep going down. Do the same thing for soda for these marginal utilities. Then for the next column, these marginal utilities per dollar, we just take what we found and divide it by the price of movies for the first one, and then price of soda for the second. And there's some decimals here. You can just, keep them in. Most of the time, they're relatively straight. They're easy decimals, not too crazy. And once we have all those, we want to see where those are equal between the two goods. So we have some highlights here, 5 and 5, 3.25, and then 2.5. Those are all the same. And then you want to find which one equals the budget. And that's important because we're going to spend all of our $40, but no more. And it's probably good to start with like the first one, maybe where this is equal to 5. Again, we look over to the quantities. So that says 2 movies and then 6 sodas, and calculate how much that costs. So if movies cost 8, so 2 movies times $8 is 16, and 6 sodas times 4 is 24. When you add that all up, you actually get 40, which is the budget. And because you get that first, you just stop. You don't have to do these next ones. So that's okay if it comes out first. It might not always come out first, or you might have to do the next one. But once you get to 40, exactly 40, you're done. So that combination, you'd say, again, 2 movies and 6 sodas maximizes the total utility for this person. So looking at this, can we calculate the total utility of that bundle? Like, how much utility is this person getting overall? They think of how we would do that. Well, what we want to do is we would want to look at that combination. So again, where it's 5. Find the total utility for both. So 2 movies gives us a total utility of 90. And then go down to 6 for the soda, and you get 225. We would add those two together to get the total utility overall. So total utility, again, 2 movies is 90 units, 90 utils. The 6 sodas is 225, which is a lot of utility for sodas, that's okay. And you add them together and we get 315 utils.